This week we begin in the portion of Vayechi. Vayechi Yaakov Eretz Yisrael Shvais Reishana. Yaakov lived in Egypt 17 years. Vayehi me Yaakov Shnei Chayov. The days of Yaakov, the years of his life. Sheva Shonim Arboim Umashona. 147 years. So over here the Balaturim points out, what does the Torah begin? Vayechi, he lived in Egypt. What is it that important to tell us? He lived in Egypt for 17 years. He lived. We know he's in Egypt. He lived 147 years. So he explains, Sherishonim lohoyu chayim. Original years were all blotted out. He really didn't live a life. Sheri Oma ke'erid al b'ni ovil she'olo. When he believed Yosef, the apple of his eye, his most beloved of all his sons, was devoured by a beast. So his whole life was destroyed. So only when he came to Egypt, those were the 17 years that he really lived. Because of the suffering that he had suffered, it's as if he didn't, prior to this moment, he didn't live. So when did he begin living? The 17 years he was in Egypt. This is Vayechi. Yaakov Eretz Mitzrayim. Shvais Reishana. The Rabbi Rabbi points out that the numerical value of Vayechi is 34. So the first 17 years of Yosef's life, Yaakov was with his son, his most beloved son. This was the firstborn of Rachel, who was the main, she was the primary matriarch. She's referred to in Chazal as the Akeres Habayis. She's the primary matriarch. And this was her son. He's the Lahova. He's the flame that goes out and consumes Esau, Edom. And then you have the last 17 years of his life that he spends with Yosef. So how many years did he spend with Yosef? 34 years. The numerical value of Vayechi is 34. Vayechi, if you want to know what the full life of Yaakov was, it was 34, the first 17, and the last 17 years of his life that he spent in Egypt, but it was because it was the years he spent together with Yosef. That's the Rabbeinu Bachya. We find in Parshas Vayigash, where when Yaakov becomes aware that Yosef is alive, he says he must go to Egypt to see his son Yosef. Now, why? When he must go to see his son Yosef? Let his son come see him. So you could say until now Yosef wasn't able to inform his father that he was alive, that because of the dreams that he had dreamt, which were prophetic, he believed that Yaakov ultimately would come to Egypt and bow to him, because that was the dream, which ultimately it happened towards the end of his life. Towards the end of Yaakov's life, as it says, when he fulfilled his request, it says he bowed opposite him. So that was the bowing. But now that Yaakov understands that it's not happening, his brothers already bowed, all his brothers bowed to him as being the sustainer. These are the sheaves of wheat bowing to the one sheaf. So that aspect of the dream came to fruition. But why doesn't he come to his father? Yaakov is going down to Egypt to see Yosef. I must go see him. Rab Od Yosef b'nichoy. My son Yosef is still alive. I will go and see him before I die. He has to see him. What does he have to see him for? And we find that he was frightened even to go. Where Hashem appears to Yaakov, and he says, Al tira meir de Mitzrayim, they'll be fearful to go down to Egypt. Yaakov was afraid, but Yaakov says, I must go. Why must you go? We discussed last week, it says when he saw the wagons, his spirit became enlivened, meaning he was able to rise outside of his breast state, his melon. And the Shekhinah and the divine presence came upon him. He began prophesying. But why when he saw the agolos, the wagons? So Rashi cites Chazal, because when Yosef sent the wagons, it was as an allusion to allude to the last Torah subject matter they had studied together. What was the last subject matter they studied together? The mitzvah of Egla Rufa. Law, if you find a corpse outside of a community and you're not sure, you're not able to locate the murderer, the community has to atone. Because maybe they didn't accommodate the person, they didn't host the person properly. So they take the calf, they break its neck at a certain location, and then the elders, the members of the High Court of Israel, the Sanhedrin Gedolah, they make a declaration. We bear no responsibility for the death of this man because we accommodated him, we hosted him properly, we gave him to drink, and we escorted him out of the community. So his death is not due to anything which we withheld from him. Okay? That's the last thing, that's the last halacha, the last law, subject matter they studied together. So when he saw that, his spirit became enlivened. Why? It's seemingly because that was an indication that it's Yosef. What about wait, you mean he didn't believe his sons? I mean, if he believed Yehuda, that when Yehuda took responsibility for Binyamin, and he was willing to release him under his jurisdiction to return him, so if Yehuda says Yosef is still alive, why wouldn't that be enough? Why did he need the wagons to allude to the last Torah subject matter they learned? Otherwise he wouldn't have believed. He would have believed. What, he's not believing Yehuda? Evidently he has credibility to Yehuda. And the other sons have credibility. And Binyamin says, it's his brother, full brother. You mean he's not going to believe Binyamin? Binyamin was actually the equivalent of Yosef in his father's eyes, because this is the only remaining son of Rachel. So why did he need that? Only then, when he sang Hod Yosef Chai, that wasn't enough. When he saw the wagons, that was the confirmation. So the understanding is, when we speak about Yosef being alive, the Gemara tells us that Rishon b'chayim kru yamesim, that an evil person, even when he's alive, he's the equivalent of an existing person. He's not alive. Why? So what is the essence of a person? His spirituality. But if his spirituality has no relevance, it's not functional, human being is not an animal, his value is not his physicality, the physicality is only to facilitate the spirituality. So therefore, Rishon b'chayim kru yamesim, regardless of his physical capabilities and potential, it's irrelevant to what he is. His essence is not relevant. His essence is spiritual. For all intents and purposes, he's non-existent. As a result of that, Rishon b'chayim kru yamesim, Yosef is the viceroy. Yosef is the ruler. Yosef is the master. But who's Yosef? Yosef is the one who has to be sensitive and have a capacity to understand all aspects of Torah to prepare Klal Yisrael for this lengthy exile that we're in. If Yosef failed in that area, and it's very questionable, how does a single individual survive 22 years without a support system? It's miraculous. The only way you have to literally be the equivalent of Yaakov. As Yaakov was able to survive Padna Aram, being in that location for all those years. Im Lavan Garti v'Targ Mitzvah Shamarti. Although I sojourned with Lavan, I kept the 613 precepts of Torah meticulously. But we said more than that. V'lo Masav Aroyim, and I was totally non-influenced. I did not learn from his evil ways. My values are not diminished as much as an iota. But if Yosef doesn't have that same acuteness of clarity and sensitivity, that means Yosef failed. So when Yosef set the wagons, it was to allude, I'm the same Yosef. So we're not speaking about Yosef Chai. Chai is not enough for his father. Yosef is still alive. Does Chai mean the physical sense? Or does Chai mean tzadikim b'misos and kurim chayim? Or does it mean in the spiritual sense, is he alive? So when he saw the wagons, which alluded to the last Torah subject they had studied together, Vatchi Ruach Yaakov, he became enlivened. Now he was risen out of a melancholy state, and now the Shekhinah came upon him. Because now he understands that Yosef is still spiritually attuned, that he has the capacity, and actually he functions as he was meant to function, to prepare for the exile. We find Hashem says to Yaakov, Al tira meiv de Mitzrayim. Don't be fearful. Don't be afraid to go down to Egypt. Ki l'goy godla simcha sham. It's interesting. Hashem could have said, God could have said, Al tiro l'leches l'mitzrayim. What's the lay rate? Say, good. Throughout the Torah we find that Yisrael is gvo mikol harotzos. Eretz Yisrael is higher. So when you go from Eretz Yisrael, Israel, to Egypt, you're going down. I mean, the Torah has to give us the geographical location, and when you go from Canaan to Egypt, you're going down. What's Al tiro meir mitzrayim? Don't be fearful to go down to Egypt. What's his fear? As great as I am, but what does Egypt represent? Yaakov was concerned for himself and his family. Yosef is one thing, but if I go to Egypt with my family, you don't know how you're going to be affected. Spiritually, we may be diminished there. Al tira meir mitzrayim. Don't be fearful for that descent. That descent will not affect you. Ki l'goy godla simcha sham. It's only there that you're going to become that great nation that ultimately, which you're going to be able to achieve the critical mass of 600,000 men above the age of 20 to merit the Gula, the redemption to be able to stand at Sinai to receive the Torah. Rabbi Bachi asks a question. The most special family in the history of Klal Yisrael was the family of Yaakov. Yaakov and the Shiftei Koch. So if that is the case, why did God wait for Sinai to give the Torah to Klal Yisrael? He should have given to Yaakov Abonov. Yaakov and his they should have been the recipients of the Torah. Of course, they studied Torah. Yaakov is Yaakov Tishtam Yoshev Holim. He's the man of the tent. He dwelt in the tent of Torah. Shared the Torah with his children. But it was Eina Mitzvah Osa. But it was on a non-obligatory level. The only mitzvahs that they were obligated to keep were the 7 no-hide laws, Milah, circumcision, and Gid Anoshe. And not to eat the sciatica nerve, the hind quarter. That's the nerve in the hind quarter of the animal. But outside of that, then there are no hides. Although they kept the Torah, but that's on the non-obligation level. God should have communicated the Torah to them, given it to them, that the mitzvah, they're commanded to observe the Torah. And as the Gemara says, Godla mitzvah yosem mishein mitzvah, greater is the one who's obligated to keep the Torah than the one who's not obligated. So why not? So Rabbeinu Bachi explains, because for the Torah to be given, you need the critical mass number of 600,000 males above the age of 20. So as special as Yaakov and his family were, that Yaakov himself was the Bechir Sheba Avos, it's irrelevant. But factually, you need the critical numbers. So that could only happen in Egypt. Ki l'goy godla simcha sham, al tira mer de Mitzrayim. Don't be fearful to go down to Egypt, because only there will you reach this critical mass, and only then we could address the objective of creation, which is Bereshis bara Elokim, that the world was created to be the location of the study of Torah, the observance of the Torah. Therefore, only the goy godla simcha sham. Now the question is, why couldn't they reach that critical mass in Canaan? It had to be only there. So this goes back to the Bris Bein Absorim. We have the covenant between the parts. What did Hashem say to Avram in the prophecy? Ger yizarcha beretz l'Elohim. Va'avodum v'inu osam. They will be enslaved, afflicted, Arba Me'er Shana for 400 years. From the birth of Yitzchak till the redemption of Egypt, it was 400 years, if you calculate the time. Therefore, they had to go to Egypt to be enslaved, to be afflicted, and so on and so forth. So therefore, it's only, so where will that number evolve? Kilgoi Godel Asimcha Shom, only there. That's simple. So what was it fearful of? It was fearful of Egypt diminishing him, diminishing his family. Anochi Ered Ibcha Mitzrayim. I will go down with you to Egypt. Vanochi Alcho Gam Olo, and I will bring you back. Yosef Yoshis Yodo Einecho. Yosef will put his hands upon your eyes. Meaning when you pass away, he will close your eyes. And he will be responsible to bring you back. The Maral points out in his work, Where's Hashem? we find Rashi, beginning of Vayechi, cites Chazal. Why is Vayechi Parsha Stuma? It's referred to as a sealed portion. In terms of the paragraph structure, it says, because when Yaakov passed away, Nishtabdu, Nistamu Eineim, V'libam Shel Yisrael, because of the Shibud. Fishakev Shenifta Yaakov Avinu, because when Yaakov Avinu passed away, Nistamu Eineim, V'libam Shel Yisrael, Shibud. As a result of the suffering of the Shibud, of the bondage. So therefore, our eyes and hearts were sealed because of the bondage. So what does that mean? Even though it says explicitly at the beginning of Shmos that the bondage didn't actually start until the passing of that whole generation. And over there, the Orach Chaim HaKodesh points out that there were stages of bondage. So he explains it this way, he says, as long as Yaakov was alive, we were totally insulated, fully insulated. That even on the most subliminal level, we were totally unaffected. To any degree, it's as if we weren't in Egypt. That was Yaakov's presence emanated and emitted such a degree of Kedusha, it was like raising his children at Padam Aram. No different. When he passed away, that impurity started to seep in. So in terms of the actually function, it wasn't noticeable. But factually, they were affected. You're no longer the same. You're no longer the same. I'll give you an example to explain this. However, as long as Yosef was alive, because Yosef was the viceroy, his family was treated like royalty. If he's the viceroy, his family's treated like royalty. When Yosef passes away, then the royal status no longer exists. But they're treated like commoners. Not special, not mistreated, like commoners. When the whole generation passes away, this is the beginning of the bondage. That's at Orach Chaim. So it came in stages. But as long as Yaakov was alive, we were unaffected to any degree. The impurities of Egypt had no relevance to us. That was the effect of Yaakov being in Egypt. He passes away, it's not the same. We say every day in the closing of the Shemon Esrei, the Amidah, that at the end of time, how pleasant will the mincha be? Right? It will be cheshanim kadmonios. V'orva minchas Yudah v'Yerushalayim cheshanim kadmonios. At the end of time, the mincha, the meal offering, will be as pleasant as what? As ancient days, ancient years. Which ancient years? So Midrash says it doesn't mean ancient years, the time of the first and second temple. It'll be as sweet to God as the time of Adam Arishon when he brought his sacrifice, where there was no idolatry in existence. But at the time of the Beis Hamikdash, where there was idolatry, having idolatry in existence immediately detracts. It already puts a certain level. The korban, as great as it may be, is exposed to the impurity of idolatry. The world is no longer pristine. When Adam brought his korban, at the beginning of existence, the day he was created, the world was a pristine world. As a result of that, his korban had a special sweetness, which later the korban, the sacrifice, didn't have any. As ancient days when there was no idolatry in the world. Understand? When Yaakov was in Egypt, he negated every negative force that existed in Egypt. The moment he passes away, we coexist with that force. That we coexist with that force, our actions no longer have the same value. So if they no longer, therefore, that causes a certain blockage. This is Nistamu Eineim V'libam Shel Yisrael. Our eyes and hearts became sealed as a result of the passing of Yaakov. Yaakov understood this. Hashem said to them, you go to Egypt. Altir Meid Mitzrayim. Ki L'goy God La Simcha Sham. You'll be there, you'll be made into a great nation. I will make you into a great nation. Yaakov understood that the survival of Klal Yisrael, even though it says that the vast majority of Jews in Egypt became idolaters, except for the Shevet Levi, they were not, but factually. But how long did it take us to rebound from that idolatrous belief? After being exposed to the 10 months, to the Esamakos, the 10 plagues, on the 50th day, we said Nasa v'nishma. We said Nasa v'nishma at Sinai. That's what happened. So what does that mean? If factually Yaakov wouldn't have been there for the period of time he was there in Egypt, we would have been diminished earlier. That seepage of impurity, spiritual impurity, would have begun earlier. Who knows if we could have survived it? So therefore, you must go, because you will be guaranteed the survival. That great nation that's meant to leave Egypt to stand at Sinai, that's only if you're there. Because if you don't offer that singular environment, there's never going to be a great nation. They may, in numbers, they may be great and they'll assimilate, but they have no value. But in terms of ultimate what greatness is, that's only if you're there. So it could be, I was thinking, Vayechi Yaakov be'eretz Mitzrayim 17 shana. Why did he live there? The Balaturim says because those are the years he spent with Yosef. So that was like the sweetest years of his life. Because he was with Yosef, his most beloved son. No. Vayechi Yaakov be'eretz Mitzrayim, because being there, as Hashem originally said, Al Tira Mer de Mitzrayim. Your being there will guarantee the survival of the Jewish people. Your being there will guarantee that ultimately there'll be a Kabbalah Torah. They'll be giving a Torah at Sinai. Your being there will guarantee that Klaus will address the objective of creation. And my name will be glorified. So what is the value of the 17 years Yaakov spent in Egypt? This Vayechi. This was his true life. His greatest accomplishment of his life was these last 17 years. Because if not for these 17 years, his life's accomplishment is what? Is undermined. And it's wasted. Therefore, that's Vayechi. Vayechi Yaakov be'eretz Mitzrayim 17 shana. Although he lived 147 years, these are the years that he truly lived. Because he understood how crucial and essential and vital these 17 years was for the survival of Klal Yisrael. Over here he says something, the Orach Chaim HaKodesh, in Parshas Vayigash, and he says something here similar to what Rav Chaim Voloshin says. So he says, Hashem says to him, Anochi Erid Imcha Mitzrayim. I will go down to Egypt with you. So the Orach Chaim HaKodesh says, Me'akosav mashma ki yordi imo shechina. It seems to be the divine presence went to Egypt. The kosher, the Devreim. It's difficult. She'omru ki Mitzrayim lios mleya gilulim. Since Egypt was rife with idolatry, lo yesu shechina sham. There was no shechina. The divine presence was not in Egypt. Lezel yemoshe tzorach lotzi schutz li'ilis palia. Therefore, whenever he prayed for the plague to stop, to cease, he had to go outside the city. Because the city had such a degree of impurity, Moshe had to leave the city to pray. The chsiv kitzeisias a year. This is when I leave the city. And here it says, Hashem says, I will go down to Egypt with you. V'ulai. And he says something, but he says he dismisses it immediately. El shariisi she'amrozal b'kama komas ki shechina imoim b'Mitzrayim. But it says explicitly in the Medrash that the Shechina was in Egypt. It says, Golul Mitzrayim Shechina Imoim. It's quoting the Midrash. We were exiled to Egypt, the Shechina, divine presence, was with us. V'chein Omru, in this week's Parsha, V'ishtachvu Yisrael Arosh HaMito. It says, Yisrael, Yaakov, he bowed at the head of the bed. L'Shechina Shohisa. The Shechina was there. V'od Omru. Alkein Askilcha He says, I will enlighten you. I will enlighten you to understand what this means. And what he says here is the same thing as the Maral says in his commentary on Pirkei Avos. The Maral asks a question, Pirkei Avos, he doesn't cite this. It says in the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, it says, 10 people are sitting and learning Torah. It says, Shechina Imoim. Divine presence is with them. Chamisha Yoshim V'Lomdei Torah. 5 are sitting and studying Torah. Shechina Imoim. Shlosha Yoshim V'Lomdei Torah. 3 are sitting and studying Shechina Imoim. If 2 people are Yoshim V'Lomdei Torah, Shechina Imoim. If 1, Shechina is Imo, the divine presence. So he asks, so if 1 has the Shechina, so what's the difference between 1 and 10? It seems to be, regardless of the number, the divine presence is with the person. So what's the difference between 10 and 1? So he explains, in every situation, the divine presence is with the person, but the different degrees, the different levels of intensity of divine presence. 10 representing a greater number, and 10 being a microcosm of Klal Yisrael. That's 10, that's the minyan. We speak about being the Dashti B'Soch B'dei Yisrael. Kiddush Hashem is always within the context of 10. Dovashim Gedusha, anything of sanctity is always 10. Kaddish is 10. Kriyas HaTorah is 10. Kedusha is 10. Because this is all Dovashim Gedusha. It's an aspect of sanctity. It's always within 10. So because 10, Shechina Imam. But that dimension of Shechina is a different level of Shechina. 5, it's less than 10, but it's more than 3. The intensity is less than 10, but the presence is greater. 3 is greater than 2, and 2 is greater. So when it says Shechina Moim, it's not the ultimate level of the divine presence. That's how the Maral explains the Mishnah. So the Or Chaim says something similar here. He says, Ki hadrogos or Ashchina Rabim Hemo. The many levels of the light of the divine presence are many. Halo Timtso Shasor Yoshvim quotes the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. Umotzinu shel yorda Shechina beineim shel Yisrael el ach she'osu Mishkan. It says explicitly in Torah. When did we have the Shechina? When we built the Mishkan. And took many things had to be done to bring the Shechina, the divine presence. Ubi Ridosa, what happened when the Shechina came? It says they bowed and they proclaimed God's glory. Ro Masa Shem v'Koved Hashem Molei HaMishkan. Mash'ein Hergish Kain v'Loch Yotzim B'Shosha Oskim B'Torah Afilu Elef. You can have 1,000 people studying Torah. Whatever Shechina that is, it's not comparable to what happened in the Mishkan. But that's called Shechina, this is called Shechina, so what's the difference? Elevadi Yesh Hadrogos Ein Misbo Lehem. Said we see clearly the different gradations of intensity of the divine presence, which are unlimited. La Shro Shechina Besod Ki Gavo Me'al Gavo Shomer. V'Yisrabe Ha'or B'Ashroso Kvi B'chinas HaSovev Hashros HaShechina. And based on the cause of why the Shechina is entering, that will determine the degree and abundance, intensity of light which will come as a result of that. Say Lamad Hashor Shechin Bar Sinai. Sinai was the greatest, the most advanced level of God's presence. Ulamatim Menu. And what was the one less than that? Hashros Beis HaMikdash. Mostly Mikdash Shechanti Besochim Beis HaMikdash. Ulamatim and Hashor Shechino Ala Novi. A prophet when he prophesies. What's the basis? God's presence attaches itself to him. And this is how the communication comes about. Ubeis HaKnesses, Ubeis HaMedrash. The Gemara tells us in Megillah that a Beis HaMedrash is referred to as Migdash Ma'at. It has a semblance of the temple. That's what it is. Ubein Asor She'oskim B'Torah L'mato. 10 studying, 5 studying, 3 or 2 or 1. Various levels of Shechina. But each one's a different level. Now he says, with this we've reconciled all the Medrashim. When it says Shechina Yorda Imoim, when we went to Egypt, we were exiled to Egypt, the Shechina accompanied us, it doesn't mean the ultimate level of the divine presence. Therefore Moshe says, I had to leave the city to pray. He says, but the level of dimension of light which is associated with those who study Torah. Within that realm of Shechina, that went with Yaakov to Egypt. Now, something else about it. I was thinking why the question was not a question. It was not a question. It says, Yardu Yisrael Mitzrayim Shechini Moim. Shechina was with them. Now, Chazal ask, before the Mishkan was built, where was the Shechina? It says it was with the patriarchs. It says, Heine Heine Merkava. They are the location for the Shechina. So the identical level of Shechina in the Mishkan, that was the Shechina, that was the divine presence associated with Yaakov and Avram and Yitzchak. Yaakov was the greatest level among all three of them. He was the location of the Shechina. Which Shechina? The Shechina which was the equivalent, because it says afterwards, that level was in Mishkan. We're asking a question, but it says Moshe, it's only when he left he had to go outside the city because the level of impurity in Egypt. But how are we differentiating? With the Maral. When Yaakov went to Egypt, there was no seepage. If Egypt didn't exist, it's like he carved out a portion for himself. That wasn't called Egypt. Moshe was not Yaakov. Moshe was not the location of the Shechina. As a result of that, it's not difficult. Yardu Yisrael, Golu Yisrael Mitzrayim Shechina Imam. But why? Because Yaakov went to Egypt. It's true, after Yaakov passes away, the Shechina is no longer there. It says, Kishagolu. When we went to Egypt, the divine presence was with us. For how long? For those 17 years that Yaakov lived in Egypt. Afterwards, it's not there. The level of Shechina is not there. But that was crucial. That was crucial for our survival. Without that, the erosion, the spiritual erosion would have begun immediately. The moment we entered into Egypt, it would have been the beginning of the end. But Yikru Yemei Yisrael almost days of Yisrael were nearing for him to pass away. Yikru Yosef, he summons his son Yosef. So Rashi explains why did he call Yosef? Because something had to be carried out, and the only one who had the ability to carry out his request was Yosef, because he's the viceroy of Egypt. And what does he say to him? There's a father speaking to a son. He doesn't say, if I please, he's pleading with him. He's supplicating him. If I please find favor in your eyes, please put your hand put your hand under my thigh. This is in preparation, take an oath. Vosisi modi chesed ve'emes, and you will do with me a kindness of truth. Al no siprim Mitzrayim. In one pasuk, Yaakov says the word no 3 times. He's beseeching him. Father's pleading with the son. Im no motzosi chen. No, put your hand under my thigh. Please don't allow me to be buried in Egypt. Why? Let's leave out one no. I'm asking you a great favor. But say no 3 times, a father to a son in one puzzle. And who's Yaakov to Yosef? Yaakov is everything to his father, to his son. Everything. He hitched his own chariot to go out to greet his father. Yaakov was able to have the greatest glory in the history of mankind, as it says in the Medrash. There were 2 people who had the greatest glory in mankind, Yaakov and Yisro. Because if the viceroy goes out, who else? Who doesn't go out? The elders of Egypt, the masses went out. Everyone went out to greet Yaakov. So Yaakov has to plead no 3 times. What does he have to say no? Continues to over and over no. For what reason? Al nosik rein Mitzrayim. Where does he want to be buried? So he says to his son, V'shachavti mavosai, when I pass away, Dosasani Mitzrayim. I don't want to be carried out of Egypt. Ukvartani b'kurosam. I want to be buried in their burial location. Meaning the Moras Machpelah. That's what I'm asking you. V'yomar anochi esek v'recha. I will do exactly as you request. As your words, as you're requesting. V'yomar hishavali. He says, I want you to take the oath. V'hishavalo. And he swears, Vayishtachu Yisrael Rosh Hamito. Yisrael bowed at the head of the bed. He gave thanks. Because it was evidently, you have to give thanks. Evidently, you're giving thanks. It's not so simple. It's not so simple. It wasn't simple. You ask your son, could you please bring me something? Say, please, manner of speech. And he accommodates your request. You bow. You bow to give thanks to Hashem that your son brought you something. Your son owes you your life. Whatever Yosef was due to his father. Everything is due to his father. He has to plead with his son. And when he finally acquiesces to his request, the Siforno says, Lahodos lakono, to give thanks to his maker, al shechono lahasik zeh meis beno, that God was gracious that he was able to achieve this from his son. Hear this? He says, when Eliezer Eved Avram had heard that Besuel and Lavan had said, it's from God, this match, V'yishtachu arzo l'Hashem, said he prostrated himself to give thanks to God. Yeah, he's equating this to that. There wasn't so simple. They wouldn't have released Rivka, so who's going to be the future matriarch of the Jewish people? So that it worked out, and Hashem listened to his tefillah, to his supplication, and the schus of Avram, his master, gave thanks to God that he was able to succeed in the mission to bring Rivka back. He says, that's what, Vayishtachu Yisrael the Rosh Hamito, to give thanks to his maker that he was able to achieve what he wanted through his son. Similar achievement. Not so simple. Why isn't it simple? Well, clearly it's not. If he has to say no 3 times, and then he has to bow, and the bowing according to Siforno is to give thanks, this is an achievement. This is not a simple feat over here. What happened? But what was so difficult? I was thinking, we read that Yosef is informed that his father is not well. So what does he do? He immediately takes his 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, because he says, I want them to receive a blessing himself before my father passes away. He understood the near is coming. The near is not far off. The end is not far off. So he says to Yosef, Ato shnei vonecha nolodem l'cho be'eretz Mitzrayim. Your 2 sons who were born to you in Egypt, Ad boi elecho Mitzrayim lihem, before I came to Egypt. They are the equivalent of mine. Ephraim and Manasseh, Kruven, Shubin, Yuli. Your 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, although they are my grandchildren, but in terms of status, the equivalent of Reuven and Shimon, their tribes, although they're grandchildren. Seemingly, it's a little difficult. It would have been enough to suffer. Shnei vonecho, Ephraim and Menashe, Kirun Shimon Yuli. Your two sons, Ephraim and Menashe, should be the equivalent of Shimon and Reuven and Shimon. That's not what he says. He has to give us a whole background. First of all, we know where Ephraim and Menashe were born. And we know who they were born to. Yosef was the father. Where were they born? They were born in Egypt. And we knew they were born before Yaakov came to Egypt. So what does he have to tell Yosef? Your two sons that were born to you in the land of Egypt, before I came to you in Egypt. Liheim. So what is he saying? Because they were born to you in Egypt, before I came to Egypt, that's why they are mine. Therefore, they have the value of Reuven and Shimon. What does that mean? Who are Ephraim and Menashe? They weren't simple. Ephraim and Menashe, in terms of the spiritual dimension, were no less than Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. No different. The equivalent of what? Of the sons of the matriarch and the patriarch. But Joseph's not a patriarch. Joseph's the son of the patriarch. He's not the patriarch. But yet, Yaakov says, your sons are the equivalent of my sons. They have identical status as one of my children. They're the Shiftei Koh. They're the tribes of God. Why? Do you know why? Your two sons who were born to you in Egypt, which is minimally Padan Aram. It's no less than the community of Lavan. Ad Boei Lechem Mitzrayim. They were born, meaning that they were spiritually sound. And of the special dimension of spirituality wasn't because I created that internal environment. It had nothing to do with me. They're your sons. So who created that environment that they should be mentored to be the equivalent of what? Of my children. You. If that's the case, you're no different than I. In terms of your spiritual dimension, you're the equivalent of myself. Therefore, because they were born from you before I came to Egypt, therefore Ephraim and Menashe are the equivalent of Reuven and Shimon. That's why they're li. They're the equivalent of mine. That's seemingly what the Torah is saying. Over here, the Or Chaim HaKadosh points out, he says something interesting. He says, you see from here, it's like on a different level, that the nefesh of Yaakov and Yosef are one of the same. They had a similar dimension of soul. He says, therefore we find, I mean, Yosef is not counted. The times he's counted as one of the 12 tribes, but he's not, right? The 12 tribes are Ephraim and Menashe, right? In the Siyam, when they inaugurated the Mishkan, the one who brought the gifts and the korban on the first day, the second day, Ephraim and Menashe. It's not Yosef. They were the children of Yosef. But why not? Why shouldn't Yosef? Yosef being the son of Yaakov, he should be counted as one of the tribes. So he says, because he's the equivalent of the Av. Just as Yaakov is not counted as one of the tribes, because he's the patriarch, Yosef has a semblance of patriarch. So if you're a patriarch, you can't be counted as a tribe. Therefore, his sons are counted as tribes, not himself, for that reason. Because a patriarch cannot be counted as a tribe. Okay? So what has Yaakov done? He established Yosef as being the equivalent of a patriarch, and therefore his children are the equivalent of Reuven and Shimon. Okay? So what has he designated Yosef as at this moment as being his successor? As Yaakov was the leader and the mentor of his children, so too you are now the equivalent of myself. Until he's designated Reuven, Ephraim, and Menashe, Yosef in potential could have been that. But at this moment, in a formal context, Yosef was established to be the equivalent of Yaakov. Because it's your children are like my children. Okay? Then he seems to be speaking about something unrelated. Ani bevoy padnaram, meisalai rochel, beretz, Canaan, baderech. When I was returning from Padnaram, that's Lavan, Mesa Olai Rochel. Rochel died. We will see what Olai means. What's the Olai? Upon me. Be'eretz Canaan, Baderech on the way. She was in childbirth. She passed away in childbirth. Both Kibras Eretz Lobo Efrosa. The Ekbara Shom Baderech Efros. I buried her on the way. So what exactly? What relevance does this have to do with anything? He designates Ephraim and Menashe as to be the equivalent of Reuven and Shimon. Then seemingly he digresses and he speaks about what he did to his mother. How suddenly she passed away and he buried her on the way. So Rashi cites Chazal. V'ekbaro Hashem v'lo holachtia afilu beis lochem lachnis loretz. When she died on the way, I could have transferred her to Beis Lechem to bury her in the land itself. V'yodati sheish b'libach olai. And I know you're harboring ill feeling against me because you felt it was a disgrace to your mother what I did. Here, this is Yaakov's talking to his son. Avol dalucho shall pi adibur kavarti Hashem. But I want you to know that it was based on divine dictate that I buried her on the way. Why? Because she will be of assistance to her children. When the Vuzaradan will take them into exile, to take them to Bavel, to Babylon, and they will pass by her grave. Yotzas Rochel al Kibro. Rachel will come out of her grave, Ubolcho, and she will cry and wail, Umevakeshes Aleim Rachmim, and she will supplicate Hashem for mercy. Shenemar, as it says in the Novi, Kol Barama Nishmo, her voice will be heard from in the heights. VaKadosh Baruch Hu Meishivo, and Hashem will respond. Yischochel Lepulosech Num Hashem, you will be rewarded for your action. V'shavu Bonim Il Gvulam, and the children will return to their boundaries, to their borders. Therefore, although I know you're harboring ill feeling against me, so therefore maybe you're not going to want to carry out what I'm asking you. But what I did was not offensive. That was divine. Al pi adibur. It was divine command. That's why he did it. So let's understand. When did Rachel pass away? When Binyamin was born. What was the age difference between Binyamin and Yosef? 7 years. 7-year difference. Okay? Maybe 8-year difference. It was really 2 years on the road. He was born, right? So he was maybe 8 years. He was 8 and he's going to his 9th year. So now, he'd say he was a child, he didn't understand at the time. But at the age of 17, Yosef definitely understood what his father didn't do. That means Yosef has been harboring this ill feeling against his father from the age of 17 until this moment. Yosef was separated from his father for 22 years. So maybe Yaakov felt at 17 still not mature enough to explain it to him. But now when he finally comes to Egypt, and he spent 17 years, he's already the viceroy. So he has a capacity to understand. Seemingly he's mature enough. So he should say to Yosef, I know you're harboring ill feeling against me. I want to explain it to you. The reason why I buried your mother on the roadside, but he should have explained to him, it was divine dictate, because when Klal Yisrael will go into Golus, into exile, it's essential your mother will come out and cry on behalf of her children. But he doesn't explain it to him then. He waits to the very end of his life. He says, I know all these years you've been harboring ill feeling against me. I'm going to explain to you now. If a person, you know he's harboring ill feeling, without a question, so explain it immediately. Alleviate this negative feeling. Why should he have this negative feeling to you? For what reason? So the way I understand it is this way. Very often, a person asks a question, and you give him an answer. And the answer is the answer. So intellectually, you understand the answer. But there's something within your emotion that the answer doesn't satisfy your feeling. Because emotionally, you're hurt. You're hurt. Factually, the ultimate is to be buried in the Moras Machpelah. Not to be married on the roadside. So give me an answer, well, it's divine dictate. But Still, my mother is not going to be with you in the Mars Machpelah. So even though Yosef intellectually, and even in terms of responsibility for Klal Yisrael, he prepared for the exile, Yosef who Mashbir, he is the sustainer, he's the provider, he's the shalit, he's the ruler, everything, spiritually sound. But what was his capacity to appreciate this answer? Still, Yaakov felt, even if I share this with him, he doesn't have the capacity to fully appreciate the necessity of his mother being buried on the roadside. When will he have that appreciation? When he's going to take over the mantle of leadership, when he's responsible for Klal Yisrael. When was he established as Yaakov's successor? The children that were born to you before I came to Egypt. Ephraim, Menashe, Reuven, Shimon, Levi. Now that he's designating, who are the tribes? Yosef, although you're my son, you're not a tribe. You're the equivalent of a patriarch. Your sons will be the tribes. Now he's establishing him, now the position of leadership, as a semi-patriarch. Because now you understand what responsibility is, you will merit a divine assistance to have the capacity to fully appreciate what the responsibilities of a leader is. So now that you have it, now it starts resonating. Now what I tell you resonates. Now you understand the importance of Rochel Yotzis Mikivro. She has to leave her grave, Ubochom Ubevaka Uboneo, and she wails and beseeches God for her children. Now you have that appreciation. Therefore he waited. So now, when he originally summoned him, he says, no, 3 times in one pasuk. Please, please, please. It's a father. They had a special relationship. But what is he asking? I want you to bury me in the Mars Tumah Machpelah. Not with your mother. And where did you bury my mother? On the roadside. I know you're harboring ill feeling. At that time, he didn't explain it yet. Because at that moment, Yosef still didn't have the capacity. It was only when Yaakov became ill and he's nearing his death, now he installs Yosef to be the equivalent of the patriarch. Now you have the capacity. Before he didn't have the capacity. So now when I make the request to do with me chesed ve'emes, in the same pasuk I have said no 3 times. I'm begging you, I'm pleading with you. As much as there's an inner resistance, although verbally he didn't share that. Why? But Yaakov knew. I know yesh belibi olecho. I know you have in your heart against me. Yeah, you're carrying a grudge here against me. And it's only there because you don't understand. Therefore, I'm pleading with you. I'm not buried in Mitzrayim. I don't want to be buried there under any circumstance. This is it. But factually, even though he established him as the quasi-patriarch, he's still not Yaakov. Vayechi Yaakov, why is the Pasha Stuma? Because the moment Yaakov passes away, that impure seepage, that spiritual impurity starts seeping in. Therefore, it's Nislu Eineim, Belibom, Shel Shom Neyatzora Sashibut. The tzora of the shibut. What's the tzora? We're not talking about physical suffering to any degree. But it's tzora Sashibut. The shibut, when we're speaking about spiritual bondage. Not about a physical bondage. That seepage. If a person chas v'sholem, you feel your soul is being sapped. That's worse than physical suffering. That's worse. We speak about when we say refuas hanefesh, refuas haguf. Why does one suffer physically? Why does a person need a physical healing? The physical failing is only a reflection that there's a deficiency in the spirituality of the person. It only manifests itself in the physical. That's what we ask, refuas hanefesh, refuas haguf. To heal the nefesh, the soul, and heal the what? The body. The tzora sashibut. There is the tzora. If Yaakov's not here to insulate us, factually, it is seeping in. Our eyes and hearts are being shut down. You know, it may take 20 years to shut down. The person's dying. Doctors say, you know, the body is shutting down. God forbid, chas v'sholom, in the physical sense. The spirituality of Klal Yisrael started to shut down the moment when you have carcinogenics over so many years. It eventually evolves and develops into something which is cancerous. This is it. That's the tzoras hashibud. The tzorah was there, but where is it? By the Torah writing it as a closed parsha, the paragraph structure. It's a sealed portion. God says, I attest this fact. It's happening. You may not realize it, but it's happening. That's the tzoras hashibud. So as great as Yosef was, it wasn't on that level. So now it's interesting. So even according to what the Ohr HaChaim HaKodesh says, that the shibud came in gradations, but he explains it in the physical sense. Yosef passed, as long as Yosef was alive, we were treated like royalty. Then we were commoners. And then when the whole generation passed away, that's when they succumbed to everything else. They stopped circumcising themselves and so on and so forth. The way we're explaining it, Yosef was a quasi-patriarch. So when he passed, as long as he was alive, although there was some impurity seeping into our spirituality, but he was manning the fort. He was holding off much of it. But once he went, he passed on, that quasi-patriarch was no longer there. There's not even a semblance of Yaakov. But the Shiftei Kol are not Yaakov, are not Yosef. They're not. They're something special, but they're not Yosef. Not being Yosef, what happens? It's more serious. The seepage becomes much more intense. When they pass away, then it's full seepage. Full seepage. Now it's becoming terminal already. This is when you become idolatrous. This is what we call the real shibud. And when the real shibud happens, this is the avodas perach. So how does that manifest itself? There's the refuas and refuas haguf. When the impurity becomes what causes the soul to become sick, spiritually sick, spiritual illness, how does it manifest itself? In physical bondage.